All right. Next up, Rabbi Bronwen Mullin and Ellen Holtzblatt. Please come forward.
We're here. Hi, Bronwen. Hey, it's been a while.
I know, it's been way too long. This is so nice to see you.
Yeah, we're just having a reunion. Everybody, thanks for
Yeah,
joining us.
exactly. That's kind of how I was thinking. I want to ask all the questions like, how's life? What's going on? But
And I
but we
have
will.
answers later.
Good. I have answers too. Okay, we're gonna have a separate Kibbutz session, but we'll talk about the work. I'm so
A quick
excited.
question. Do people see it larger than it was before?
No,
Oh,
No,
I
oh, I'm not. Oh,
it's not larger than it was before.
well, let me see. No.
No, maybe not. Okay, I might try for the next one. Sorry, my bad. Okay, carry on.
no.
Okay.
Always working to get larger and larger. So and so I guess I'll do a little intro to the parsha and sort of a little bit about our process. I think we'll just go back and forth. So maybe everyone here can get a little taste of what Ellen and my amazing chavruta was like, which is really so uh, deeply, Jewishly nourishing, humanistically nourishing, in all of the ways. So we had Parshat Vayigash, which is towards the end of the book of Genesis, and it's where we've already been through the sale of Joseph by his brothers into Egypt, and now we've sort of arising at this kind of 11th hour number or moment in the story where Joseph, in fact, has now become the second most powerful person in Egypt, and his brothers have fallen on hard times. As there's been this famine that has affected not only the land of Egypt, but many, if not all, of the surrounding areas that are actually under, so to speak, Egypt's control, or about to be under Egypt's control. Um, and and in fact, Joseph is actually sort of the mastermind behind actually convincing large amounts of people to sell themselves, actually to sell over their autonomy to the Egyptian government, to the Egyptian rule, in order to be provided with food, which is sort of an interesting situation where we're talking about um, what does it take to survive in this world. And Joseph is someone who, as Ellen and I were sort of exploring and expounding upon, is someone who has really has lived a deeply traumatic life in terms of understanding his own value and understanding his selfhood and his autonomy, his physical autonomy, his emotional and spiritual, intellectual autonomy. Um, and, this experience in so many ways of being sort of pushed down and sort of controlled by family is something that is a huge part of many of our experiences. Is something that Ellen and I personally shared, really was very relevant to us. And just to say for a moment, like in the broader picture, I think we see there are lots of ways in which the younger brother, so to speak, if we talk about society as a family system, right, who's often the dreamer, maybe a little bit of the outsider, the person who sees things in different ways, can be the artist, um, is often oppressed and sort of felt need to be controlled by the larger sibling, the larger entity. So all of this is to say is that there's sort of this fantasy reversal where in fact the disempowered brother is now in charge and now has a moment of real possibility of not just confrontation with the brothers, even though he still maintains his disguise, um, but there's actually a real opportunity for tshuva. There's an opportunity for the brothers to take responsibility for what they did, even though they know that this is not actually, they don't know yet that this is their actual brother who they're confessing in front of, but there is a potentially a moment for them to show that they've really um, they've come to look at their actions and see the wrongs in which they've done. And the moment that Ellen and I really focused quite a bit on is when Judah, in fact, being given this opportunity to sort of recount um, what happened to this younger brother of his, to this Joseph, he actually ends up repeating the very same lie that's been perpetuated in the family throughout the entire time, saying that yes, we had this brother who was torn by beasts, and if we don't come back with our brother Benjamin, who Joseph is actually very strategically sort of holding captive, if we don't return back with him, surely you will send this old white-haired man down to his grave. And in that moment, we were just struck by this kind of everlasting question of well, Joseph never gets the tshuva that he deserves. There isn't really an apology. There really isn't a clean and clear resolution in this family drama. There's sort of, at a certain point, there's a bit of an acceptance that maybe we never get that fantasy tshuva. And yet somehow we still have to be in meaningful relationships somehow. So I'll stop it. That's the first piece is kind of like, I guess, giving us a little bit of the story landscape and the emotional landscape. And then I'll turn it to you, Ellen, to talk about
Okay.
how the artwork emerged, and then we'll volley.
So this one is titled, actually, what was the title? It's One That Found Peace. I tend to write long titles, so sometimes I don't remember them. But it is a drawing of my mother. It's ink on Japanese paper. And it's also involves quite a bit of tearing, a little bit of gluing, a little bit of repairs. So it wasn't just the image that became important. It was also the process that became important. I do want to just say really quickly, I apologize. I'm in a public place. And I thought that I was going to have more privacy here, but I don't. And there may be outside noises. And if that happens, just so you realize that that's what's going on. But, you know, we always have like noises in our life that come in and interfere with what we're doing. So maybe this is actually kind of perfect. But as I started working on this, and I realized I started things were happening that I wasn't happy with. And I started taking X-Acto knife and tearing away at the paper. And I discovered that I could actually tear this paper. I could tear a whole layer off the top of it. And it looked like a very fragile paper, but the paper, for the most part, maintained its integrity. Parts where it started to tear, and you could see if you show the next slide, I know this is very small, so it's a little hard to see. If it was larger, you might be able to get a better idea, but there are parts where the paper is actually tearing, and then I'm coming in and drawing over the torn areas. And it started to become important to think about how, as we have tears in our life, we have tears in our relationship, we have tears in our emotions, and then they become, but we still maintain somehow there's a resilience that not everybody, unfortunately, can maintain that, but we work to maintain that integrity, that resilience. And that's that kind of a sense of wholeness. And Bronwen was incredibly generous in our discussions with not only sharing her knowledge, but also sharing herself. And that really became a huge part of she said, yeah, really, it was just a deeply emotional and meaningful experience because it wasn't, I'm not, as I said in my previous thing, I'm not a Bible scholar. I approach everything from the personal. So I have to, I was working through my relationship with my mother. My mother is now 99 years old. She was 98 when I did this. I relate to these experiences through what is going on in my own life and my own relationships. So I understand Joseph and what he understood with his brothers through the relationships I have with my own family, with my mother. And the other thing I did want to say about this specific drawing is that I started to really think about the figure as being a part of the landscape. And originally I thought, okay, the figure is going to be enveloped by the landscape. The landscape is going to be terrifying in a way because it starts to take over. But when I started to realize recently, and I do want to show the next slide, this is not the work that I made for this, but it's one that I just finished recently. It's a very large painting. It's about 4 feet by 7 feet. That it wasn't just that the landscape became terrifying. Maybe the landscape is us. We are also the landscape. We're a part of the landscape. We are part of the universe. We are part of each other. And they're the boundaries that we experience, that we have to experience to be sane in our everyday lives. They're not, so when we're talking about tshuva and expecting tshuva from someone else, we really have to think about ourselves. And we can't, like Bronwen said, we can't always get that from someone else. We really don't. And I learned that many years ago in therapy when I really was trying to get it and I realized it wasn't going to happen. But we do have to just focus on ourselves and where are we in this world? So anyway, thank you. And I just want, also, I didn't say it at the beginning, but thank you to the Amen Institute. Thank you for this opportunity. And again, thank you, Bronwen.
The feeling is so mutual in every respect, and thank you to the maintenance. It's been so just rich and inspiring. I just want to say I'm so glad, Ellen, that you brought in this piece about the lens, because I remember, as you said, I was like, oh my God, that was a big part of what we had discussed when you started bringing in the actual piece, that it was just reminding me that part of the thing that's so interesting is that in this family drama is how important land is. You know, and the idea of wanting to return to the land of your fathers, or that you're going to be coming to a new land, right? Which Joseph has effectively had to, this new place, Egypt, which is by no means, in terms of the larger Jewish narrative, the safe space by any means. But like Joseph has had to kind of create a different landscape for himself that he can be a part of, where he can be seen and appreciated and sort of be at peace. But then even in the end, right, he wants his bones brought back to the original landscape, like where, and just anyhow, just that you highlighted with this new work, which is so beautiful, just really, yeah, brings that to the forefront again.
Well, thank
Thank
you.
you both.
Could I say something? So I want to thank you so much, Rabbi and Ellen, for these beautiful pictures. They remind me of my mother. And you need land in which to grow yourself and your children. And your mom is 99 years old. What did she live through so that you could become an artist and you can become a rabbi? Out in the open, Joseph told his family, if you have to be slaves to eat, do it. My grandfather came over and he was told, if you can't come in on Saturday, don't bother coming in on Monday. And yet my son is conservadox now, and proudly, and his children wear yarmulkes. Where you settle is so important. Thank you so much for bringing this to life.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, both of your words are very meaningful. We're going through so many different important themes very quickly, but about forgiveness and about also I'm captured by the idea of ripping, of this idea of ripping the paper, and also with Jacob when he was mourning the loss, that he didn't quite know what happened to his son. There's just this ripping,
Right.
and this, like, when we mourn, we rip, and then there's also in Jewish tradition the idea of stitching up the rips, but not always, and they don't always grow back, and so our lives are imprinted by our relationships that we have. And I also just want to say that the relationship between both of you in your chavruta was also very apparent in your presentation this past year, and very worthwhile for anyone who didn't get a chance to see it to go back and really get to hear that beautiful presentation.
It was truly a great shidduch. You did really well. Thank you.
Exactly. Always appreciate a good shidduch. Thank you.
So take a deep breath, everyone. We will be moving on to the next chavruta, next parsha, next theme. And you can also take a look at the schedule too, to see what's going on. If you want to stay here or move elsewhere, that's always an option. And just to get a sense, can everyone see the screen larger right now? Yes? Okay, great.